So, welcome everyone. My name is Marton Perhiniak, and I'm going to talk about design your career and getting into design or your creative future. I will mainly concentrate on Photoshop, but I will also mention Illustrator and InDesign on the way. And the main topics that I'm going to cover is graphic design, photo retouch, and digital art. Now, the main reason and the main theme of my 3 seminars today is to help you to find your way into the industry, or even if you are in the industry, to be able to get more exposure and to understand how the whole creative industry works. Because it's actually a massive industry and it has so many areas now. And even like something like digital art, which started probably like 10-15 years ago, now it became one of the biggest industries, and it's there everywhere. If you watch films, if you play computer games, everything starts with the digital art, the concept art, which is a massive industry. And of course, I don't have to mention graphic design, which is huge, and it's huge in London especially. And also photo retouch, which is another massive industry. So these are like the main elements of this seminar which I'm going to talk about. And if you are interested to follow the second and the third part of my sessions as well, in the second one I'm going to talk about how to get jobs. So the first one is understanding the industry, first of all. And then the second one is about how to build your portfolio, how to sell your work, and how to find jobs. I did quite a big research on this, and I've been teaching Adobe applications for like 6 years. So, and I worked with companies, quite big companies here in London, so I have quite a good understanding of it, and I would like to share everything what I know about that, interviews and just finding jobs online. And then the third one is a day in a designer's life. So it's like a curve, the whole 3 sessions together. The third one is when you are already working as a full-time or a freelance designer. How can you be more effective and more productive? Because that's very, very important to save time. So my third session, I will talk about that. That's mainly practical advices and time savers in these applications. And these are not the ones that you will find online like in tutorials. I'm going to show you in-depth secrets, industry secrets. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about graphic design. I would like to tell you, if you want to get into graphic design, what are the major skills that you will need, and what do you need to do to be able to find a job as a graphic designer. First of all, what is graphic design? There is a career guide which says graphic design is a creative process that combines art and technology to communicate ideas. The designer works with a variety of communication tools in order to convey a message from a client to a particular audience. Now this is quite long and quite difficult. What I would say is graphic design is when you combine typography with imagery. Basically that's it. So you might feel that it's a difficult topic, and when you have to do graphic design, it's very complicated and it's all lots of secrets there. It's actually very simple. You put type and images together. That's graphic design. Okay, it's very simple. And I'm going to show this example, what you see here on the screen, which is a great example of graphic design. So simple, but still it works. So basically we start with an image, okay? Let's just say this is our photograph. And then we start adding things on top of this. First of all, we add a text, okay? We have an image and we have a text. Well, of course you can tell that this doesn't really work well. You won't look at this when you are, let's say, waiting in the underground or just doing something. You won't notice this if it's on a billboard. What you have to do is to integrate the type and the graphic together, so have a nice composition. So once you start thinking about composition, actually there is already a bit of composition here, because we have a main character here on the right, not in the center. It's a bit on the right, which is following a design compositional method, the rule of thirds, and we have the text on the left. So that's already a little bit of composition, and again the text is not in the dead center, it's a bit down to the bottom. because usually rule of thirds works really well in graphic design as well and most art forms. So there's already a bit of composition, but we still need to do something with this. And what I did here to make it more prominent, first of all, I turned everything black and white and just kept the soldier in colors. And you can already see the visual clue and composition of the red color on the typography. The first integration between type and imagery you can already see. Then the next one is again just helping that, boosting up the colors of the red on the soldier. I'm using adjustment layers, by the way, in Photoshop, which makes it completely non-destructive. As you can see, I can always go back and forth, switch everything on and off, which is very important. And this is something I'm going to show in depth in my third seminar when I show the time savers, to be able to work like this. Because honestly, you won't have time to recreate things once you're working full-time designer, especially in a design agency. They will just give you so many work to do that you won't have time to recreate things. You have to make it everything completely non-destructively. So as you see, I just used 3 non-destructive adjustment layers to increase the visibility of the soldier. So I added a vignette effect on it as well, darkening the corners, and just turned everything black and white, boosted the colors of the soldier, and then to make the type more prominent, I add that background little banner. Now it's again a very simple thing to create. It looks like it's actually behind the soldier, but because we are working with a 2-dimensional image, of course there's no depth to it. So I have to create that banner first and then hide it, and I use the mask in this case to hide it, like that. Actually, I don't know if we can turn off the lights. It might be better. Just check. Much better now. Okay. So, using that banner, I again created a visual clue between the type and the image, or maybe we can say that we integrated them again more better, because we have now a 3-dimensional depth to the whole image. So the type is more blended into the environment. We actually feel like the image is in front and behind the text. So just using these simple clues and links between the type and the image, we created a nice composition, and now we can say that this is graphic design. So this is when the type and the image starts to work together, then it becomes, we can say it's graphic design. So just going back to my presentation, the next slide, I would like to talk about the main areas of graphic design, because there's so many fields in graphic design as well, which you can specialize, or you can do more than one of these as a professional. So each of them are really big. So even if you are a logo designer and you just concentrate on designing logos, you can be very successful. And I know designers who have been doing logos for like 50 years, and they are very they are in the industry and they are very like experts of the field. But there are also designers who do all of these at the same time. Myself, I like variety, and I do most of these, but I'm not just concentrating on graphic design. I do digital art and photo retouch as well. So you don't have to even be concentrating on just graphic design. You can be a retoucher and graphic designer as well at the same time. It's your choice. Of course, if you want to be like the best, it's always good to find a niche, like let's just concentrate on user interface design, and then you want to be the best, it's best to concentrate on one of those fields. If you want to be, if you like variety like myself, then you can concentrate on more fields. Of course, it will be more difficult to emerge as one of the best designers in that field. Now, the main skills needed for graphic design in general, of course, you will need to know very well typography. You have to be very good in typography. But it's not that complicated, actually, to understand typography, and I'm going to show you a couple of examples now, and then we will talk about the other main skills as well. So, talking about typography, just again, the same example, it's not that difficult in this case. All I wanted to achieve is to have the emphasis on Rome, and it's not important really, so I didn't want to have an emphasis on this. Still, I added a little visual design to it, but I made it smaller. And all these things which you do with type, you can do completely using keyboard shortcuts. Once again, this is something I'm going to talk about in more details later on. But let me just mention a couple of things like kerning, which is very useful. When you want to move closer or further away fonts or characters, you can use Alt or Option left and right arrows, which will move the text or the characters closer or further away from each other. So for example, here I can again move these further or closer to each other, and it depends where is the alignment. Now if I align it to left, I can use a different kind of kerning. So Alt, right and left arrows, very simple to move it further away or closer to each other. Because for example, this type, if I start typing with this, and let me just type in, for example, let's say world. If I have this text written down, world, and I'm going to just make it a bit smaller, and I press Command Backspace to make it white. Let me just put it here on the other side. Okay, so once you have a word like this, you want to achieve a visual consistent spacing between the characters. Because this type, if you look at it, it looks nice, but the problem is, for example, R and L is very close to each other, while between W and O and R there's a big space. And that's the default spacing between these characters. So that's something that you would like to move closer and use kerning in this case. So just to make it nice and balanced, that would be something like a proper graphic design change, what I would do. So that's typography skill that you have to understand. Very simple to apply, so you can see before and after. Very simple to apply, and also the keyboard shortcuts are very simple in Photoshop, and they are the same throughout the whole Creative Suite, but still it makes a difference, and this is something that will give you the difference in graphic design as well, to make you better in graphic design. So typography is definitely something that you have to learn and you have to understand. Image manipulation is also very important. What is image manipulation? It's like what we did with that soldier. We turned the background black and white and kept the soldier in colors. That's an image manipulation. That's mainly adjustment layers in Photoshop and filters. So adjustment layers and filters. Composition is again a very important thing. Once again, if you think about that example we did, it's the rule of thirds, for example, and also using the interaction or integration between type and imagery. And then working with colors, once again, working with colors, in this case, was the visual clue between the cape, the red color on the type, and the cape. Okay, so let me go to the next slide. Useful additional skills in graphic design. You don't have to be an illustrator to become a graphic designer. And that's usually a question that everyone asks, that do I need to be able to be good in hand drawing? And you don't have to be. I'm using a tablet, for example, to work with the computer, and because I was trained also as an illustrator, it comes naturally to me. But if you are not good in illustration, you will still be able to be great in graphic design. Because, for example, I had a colleague, he was the lead designer, and he was really bad in hand. Even his handwriting was, I couldn't read his handwriting. His sketches, I couldn't tell if it's like an animal or it's a text. Completely, he can't do anything with his writing or drawing. He don't have any drawing skills at all, but his designs are amazing. He's great with composition, he's great with type, he's great with colors, and that's all he needs, and he creates amazing designs. Let me just show you one of his designs. Just look at this, for example. That's one of his mood boards for a project, Need for Speed. So that's the guy, he doesn't like drawing at all, but he's amazing in design. Okay, so hand drawing is definitely something that is a plus. It's an additional skill that if you have, will help you as a designer, but it's not necessary to have. So because of course now in graphic design we can use vector tools, we can use images, so you don't really need to create things on your own. You can use images. For example, in this case, it's all about the type, it's all about these geometric shapes, and it's all about that couple of images and icons that he just put together. By the way, mood boards are really interesting. I had a year experience in licensing design, which is a very interesting part of graphic design, where let's say there is a licensor, in this case it's Electronic Arts, and there are the licensees, like let's say an apparel company, who would like to use these graphics on their jackets, t-shirts, watches and stuff like that. So the licensor, Electronic Arts, this game company, will ask a design agency to create a style guide which includes all these designs. Let me just show you the other designs. This is like a composition or a badge which is created by the design agency. They sell this style guide, or they provide it to the licensor, Electronic Arts, and then Electronic Arts can sell this style guide with all the designs to the licensees, let's say an apparel company, let's say Nike. Okay, so this is how the licensing industry works. So it's three main people or a client. There's the licensor, licensee, and the design agency. And you as a designer will be in the design agency creating these things. And yeah, so once again, just an example from my friend who's not good in hand drawing, but he's great in design. And there's the inspiration which we create for the licensees when they come to Electronic Arts and they want to see, okay, if we buy this style guide from you, what can we achieve with these designs? And this is like just an inspiration which we create in Photoshop. We just have these products and that's just put all the designs on it to show and inspire companies and make them buy the style guide and use the brand as a licensee. So once again, more products. And of course, these products are always matching to the style of the brand itself, in this case, Need for Speed. And there is another mood board, but just by the way, it's interesting to talk about this as well. Mood boards are the first stage in licensing design, and in graphic design as well. It's a great way to start your projects. Whenever you have a new project, you will definitely be working with a brand or a company, or at least something you will have some reference that you can collect and put together in a board like this. This will help you to understand, if you can create a design from your references, that will help you understand the whole theme, and you can create already a visual look that you can show to your clients. Okay, which one do you like? Do you like the more street and graffiti style, or you like the more cleaner and grungier, or cleaner plus grungier look on the other one? If we go back, this more like using a bit of dirt but still very clean and geometric look. So this is one look which already you can understand how it looks from the mood board. You don't have to see the design separately. And then this is the other look, which again can be divided into the designs, these core badges or sub badges, and then the application on products. So that's just a small niche part of graphic design, licensing industry, but it's still huge. It has. I've been working with game companies. I worked for Disney, Pixar when I was working at this company. We did Toy Story, Cars. It's really fun, but very stressful because the deadlines are crazy and the clients are very demanding as well. But yeah, this is a very interesting part of graphic design licensing industry. By the way, the company is called Ryzen Creative. If you want to check them out, their website is still, they don't have anything really on their website, but you can contact them. Ryzen, that's the company called. And the reason why they don't have anything on their website, because they usually have NDAs for like 5-6 years, so they can't show anything of their work for many years because of obviously because it's films and games. They are very secretive. Even after they come out, they can't show their work. So okay, and as a designer, it's also a negative side of it. I can't really show more than this because this came out already, the previous work which I just showed. Okay, so the That's just the first useful additional skill, illustration. So once again, as I said, you don't have to be good in hand drawing. If you are good, that will be just a plus. Also, the same applies. I won't go in details in all the other ones, but you can imagine photography is again something, if you know about and if you're a good photographer, it will help you to be a designer, to be a better designer, because obviously you will understand more about composition and colors and light, because that's the main things you need for photography, and that's the same applies usually to all creative fields. So for example, if you understand light, you will be good in like three-dimensional elements to put them together. You will be good in composition as well. So it's again a useful additional skill. Print production, definitely useful to know about. 3D modeling and lighting is becoming more and more needed if you want to be a graphic designer. It's not the main skill that they will ask for, but definitely will help you to find a job if you know a 3D application like Cinema 4D, 3D Studio Max or Maya or one of them. I can actually see a trend of being Cinema 4D being the best for graphic designers. The other applications are better for 3D jobs, like let's say modeling or animation jobs. But Cinema 4D, they usually ask if you are a graphic designer, but on the side you know a bit of 3D. Development, like coding and web design, is again very useful, especially if you want to be in web design. You don't have to be a coder, a developer, but it's good to have a basic understanding of like HTML and CSS, and just to be able to do a bit of coding, or maybe just show a couple of examples how you imagine your designs. The main areas of Photoshop that you will use as a graphic designer are these. It's again something that you have to understand, that Photoshop is a huge application, and the same applies to Illustrator and InDesign. Illustrator is 25 years old application, so you can imagine the amount of knowledge put into that. And also Photoshop is more than 20, I think 21 years old now. So it's an immense tools and options that you have in these applications. But the most important things are these, and this is probably like 30–40% of the whole tools in Photoshop. So again, something that you have to understand, that even in Photoshop, for graphic design, you have to focus on specific areas to become good. So you don't have to be afraid. If you are just starting out using Photoshop, you don't have to feel like, okay, I have to understand everything in this application. You have to focus in these areas. So all the tools like non-destructive workflow, like masking, adjustment layers, and vector tools, they are very important for you. And then, of course, effects, colors, type tool, vector shapes, pen tool. These are the most important ones. So if you want to look for tutorials and you want to be better in graphic design, these are the areas I recommend to concentrate on. Okay, let me go to the next one. Yeah, and you will enjoy being in graphic design, and this is usually what I think are the most important ones. So if you often find yourself spending an hour or two to choose a font, an appropriate font for, let's say, just a little invitation card, you will probably be good as a graphic designer, because that's something you need to have an eye. So you need to be, and you need to have an eye for detail. Okay, that's very important. Of course, in the creative industry, you won't have time like ours to choose a font, a good font. But if you have that sense or you feel like you need to always find the best font, that's already a good sign that you will be a good designer. If you, for example, stop and analyze poster on the street and just look at them and that's a nice composition, that again shows that you will be good in graphic design and you will enjoy it. So definitely a great field to get into, and I highly recommend it. I worked in the licensing industry, I worked in print production as well, and it's very hectic, it's very tight deadlines most of the time, but very pleasing because you work with beautiful images most of the time, and you can get to use great typography as well. So if you enjoy these two, and especially combining them, then you will like this industry. And once again, as I said, in my second session I will talk more about okay, now you understand how the industry works, but how to get into it. So I can't talk about that in this first session because I have to focus on the other fields as well. As I said, digital art is another huge field, and of course this is when the illustration and drawing comes very handy. Actually here you have to be able to be good in drawing, but in digital art, as the name says, it's all digital. So we work with these tablets, with on-screen tablets, and that's digital art and concept art. Let me read a little bit about digital art. It has been argued that digital art is not real art since it is computer generated and there are infinite copies and there is no original. However, it is not widely accepted as art since it involves creativity and the knowledge of art and design principles. So digital art is definitely something that becomes more and more known as one of the main art forms in design. And these are the main areas. As you can see, there are so many already. Probably the biggest one is concept art, which is, let me just show you a couple of examples of concept art. Just like I showed you examples of design, graphic design. Concept art is a huge industry, and let me show you the examples. So, for example, for environments, they create these images, the concept artists. This one is probably for a game or maybe for a film, but just guess how much time does it take to create something like this from scratch, from a white paper, without using any images, stock photography. It's all hand-drawn on the computer. Just guess how much time does it take to do something like this? Just a guess. A week, a year, a month. Let's go a bit lower. It's very fast. 5 hours is probably a bit too fast for this, but it might be, someone might be able to do this in 5 hours. I would say 7-8 hours would be like an optimal time for someone who is in the industry. Maybe even 5 hours is possible. Speed painting it's called. This one is also a speed painting when they using all the advantages of Photoshop, all the brushes, I mean custom brushes, and all the filters and ways to create or use the brush tool. That can save a huge amount of time, and they can come up with something like this. Usually a concept artist creates 1 or 2 or maybe even 3, 4 of these a day. So let me just show you another one. It's the same artist, and it's just, I think this is a beautiful art, beautiful to be into, but of course it's highly competitive. So if you feel that you have a good hand drawing skills and you always wanted to do paintings, then this is something that you have to be trained for. I mean, you can train on your own, but there are so many things that you have to understand: lighting, perspective, and like depth, and all the special things that they apply to these illustrations or digital art, which again is good to learn. So if you are a trained painter or illustrator, you will probably know all about these. If you're not, that it's again something that you can learn and you can get into. So these are again just examples of concept art. If you've seen John Carter, this is one of the creatures and main characters from the film. Once again, a concept art which looks exactly like what you will see in the movie. This is the beautiful thing in concept art, that you get the you will be able to create something that then will be moved on screen. So you create this art, and then the animators and modeling experts, they will create a moving creature from this, what you create on a digital art. So all these are examples of digital art, and let me show you. I have also somewhere here, just to see how it starts. Let me show you a portrait, a digital art portrait. So this is a very famous character from a Singaporean artist. This is the progress. So from start, from a quick sketch of the portrait, then the phases and stages of it, cleaning the portrait, then adding the base colors, then adding a bit of lighting, then more colors and more lighting, again more colors, adding more details, then just refining the details. Here at the last, almost at the last step, he gets rid of the main strong black lines and just blend them together with the colors he used. And then at the end, I think, yeah, that's the final detail. So you can see from a couple of steps, so just fast forward again, this is how the digital painting finishes. And then the same digital artist, again, a whole full body illustration of the same character. You can see the final painting, how it is achieved. And I can also show you, let me just find that there is a video here, which is also interesting to see. Let's start this one. Just a second. So let me go back. So from the sketch, the black and white sketch, let's see in just 20 seconds the painting itself. You can see that mainly in digital art, the artists, most artists, won't work on a specific detail and then go to another part. They always work on the whole image and try to get more details into all parts, but not at the same time, but going round and round the image, and that's the final painting. So that's just an interesting way to see, again, the whole process. And I can show you lots of other examples, but I don't want to spend too much time on digital art. So let's just, again, talk about the main skills you need. You need to have definitely good hand drawing skills, working with light and colors. For example, here is, this is probably, I think, 10 years ago, my drawing. And then after 5 years, I finished it, I went back to it, and I changed it to this. Probably now, again, 5 years later, I would do completely differently. But it's just a good example to see how I started 10 years ago. And then after 5 years that I was practicing, I had a completely different view of things. So in this case, the colors were completely off. You can see it's like completely irrelevant colors, and there's nothing matching in the whole design. Even the pose and the proportions were bad. And then it's getting a bit better after 5 years. But obviously, this is digital art, and all fields in the creative industry is something where you can't stop learning. You have to learn every day. So, but that's also, it's challenging, but it's really fun, because you always feel like, yes, I improved every day. So that's a great thing about the creative industry compared to other fields, where sometimes you learn a couple of skills and then basically you use the same things and you can't really improve. In the creative industry, there's no day without improvement. You can actually feel the improvement every day if you look back what you've done the previous day and you've done the day after. Anatomy and drawing in perspective, again, major skills you will need. And then additional skills which will help you is if you draw from life, traditional painting, industrial product design is again something they usually ask in the industry. If you have any experience with industrial product design, that can help you to find a job as a digital artist, mainly a concept artist. I studied as an industrial designer, and when I got first into graphic design, they were not really happy that I was a product designer, because they said it would have been better if you studied graphic design. But in the digital art, and concept art, they actually prefer this to graphic design. So if you study this, because here you have to create concepts, you have to come up with a new product idea, and you have to be good in drawing it down. So that is very similar to concept art, because it's basically the same. You have to come up with a monster, and you have to be able to draw it down. Okay, it's the same process. So that's why they prefer this. 3D modeling and sculpting is again something which can help you. And by the way, there is 3D sculpting as well, like ZBrush and Mudbox, which are very interesting applications to use as a digital artist. Mainly used areas and tools in Photoshop will be again different, and in this case, I would say it's only probably like 20% of the whole Photoshop tool set that you will need to use as a concept or digital artist. So it's mainly the brushes, layers, of course, and the colors, mixer brush, eraser tool, and probably that's all that you need as a concept artist. So it's much less than being working in a graphic designer. Okay, and you will enjoy. I don't really need to talk about this. I'm sure you understand that if you like watching like fantasy films, playing computer games, this is the perfect job as a creative, and this is probably the most creative job because you have to come up with just from blank page. You have to come up with something, and you don't really use images. You don't really put images together. Maybe if you work as a matte painter, but other than that you have to come up with completely from the thumbnail sketches to the final design on your own. So it's very, very creative, digital art. Now another big field is photo retouch or photo manipulation or photo editing, sometimes it's called. And the way they talk about photo manipulation on Wikipedia is it is often much more explicit than subtle alterations to color balance or contrast and may involve overlaying a head onto a different body or changing a science text, for example. Image editing software can be used to apply effects and warp an image until the desired result is achieved. The resulting image may have little or no resemblance to the photo or photos in the case of compositioning from which it is originated. Today, photo manipulation is widely accepted as an art form. And that's true because this is a huge industry and there's so many parts to it. We have fashion, beauty products, advertisement, photo art, restoration, and that's just a couple of the main ones. And let me show you an example, for example, the fashion industry. Once again, an interesting example that I was working on. Usually, if you work for magazines, and in the fashion industry, what you will get as a photo retoucher, a professional retoucher, you will have the comments from the creative director. You can see that 3 photographs, it's the same photo shoot with the same models, but most of the times when a photo ends up in a magazine, it won't be made from one photo, especially in a group shot, it will be combined from several images. And what you get as a retoucher is these 3 images where they tell you, like the creative director tells you that, okay, from this image here, please use only that area, so this one, use these 2 girls and the legs of that girl. Then for that girl in the middle, use this photo for the upper body. So basically you have to create like a Frankenstein from her, just merge it together, make it believable that it was the same photograph. And then for the 2 girls on the left, use this. And it's obvious why to use that, because, for example, she is on this photo. I can zoom closer. It's obviously not the best shot of her. So you can be an amazing photographer. It will be still very difficult to work with 5 models and to create the perfect shot. And it's not just like the clothes, because that can be retouched, or the hair, but it's just simply the pose is not. It's really bad on this one, and it's not even good on that one. So they had to use this photo for her. And once you get these, and let me just show you one a little bit closer. Once you get these, so first of all you have to composition these 3 images together, but you have to also go through all these little amendments, like thicken arm slightly, trim, round. It's not always trimming. Sometimes you have to make it more rounder. Then even on the colors, on the clothes, there's like these little creases which you have to get rid of, or straighten the creases. So very small details. Fill on the hair, where you see through the hair, that has to be filled. And even things like, let me just go down, there's so little things that you have to change. You have to pull down the clothes to hide the shoes. They don't like when there is something that you can see but it's not visible properly, then you have to hide it, or if it's visible, then it has to be visible. So for example, if there is a gap between the shoe and the foot, you have to fill that in. You have to either lift the shoe or increase a little bit, or move the foot down. Or in this case, because the photographer didn't capture the whole heel, you have to build a heel. You have to put a heel there. Simple. So this is all that they will ask you, and to create the final result, which is this, and let me show you the working file. To create the final result, you will probably have max 8 hours again, like a whole full working day for this. Probably if you can do this in like 4 or 5 hours, then you can work for that company. So if you need a whole day for this, they not necessarily, even if you do it perfect in a perfect way, they not necessarily will use you. If you can do it in 4 or 5 hours, then yeah, you can get the job. So it's again very demanding, and you have to really know what you are doing. But once again, for photo retouch, you probably use like 20% of Photoshop, all the options in Photoshop. So it's not that difficult to learn. It's all about practice. Just like in all the other fields, if you want to get into it, start and practice and learn every day a bit, and then you will finally, eventually you will get there and you will be able to work for clients like this magazine. It took me probably 3 years as soon as I started thinking about doing photo retouch. After 3 years, I managed to work for magazines like this. And the great thing in the photo retouch is probably the most independent from the company's side. So you can be anywhere around the world. You can still work for any companies around the world. Graphic design is more working in a team. Digital art is again more working in a team, while photo retouch is something that you can do from wherever you are. Of course, there are like post-production companies where they have retouchers on site, but lots of magazines, they work with design or retouchers from around the world, so you don't have to be on site. And that's a really big advantage, because obviously you can have lots of clients, international clients, and just work from home simply wherever you are. Okay, so let me just show you how it all comes together. First of all, let me just turn off all of these changes. That's without all the color adjustments, but that's already the composition that I created from 3 images. That's one of the images. And if I open this folder here, you will see that I did everything completely non-destructively. So that's again one thing that you have to understand in all creative fields. If you want to be effective, you have to work non-destructively, which means when the client comes back to you, you have to be able to quickly change whatever you changed. So if they tell you that, okay, we like almost everything, but let's just say they don't like the dress edge. If they tell me that the dress edge of the model on the left, then I know, okay, that will be this layer, I can find it. If I want to find that layer quickly, I can command click on the thumbnail to have a selection. Now I can zoom closer to it, so I just zoom in that area, and let's say I'm on the phone or on Skype or something, and they tell me what they don't like about this retouch. So that's what I did. I had to straighten these 2 lines, but maybe they don't like something about it. Maybe they want to get rid of this crease here in the background. Then I can find it very quickly, and I have it on a separate layer. So it's very easy to adjust. Okay. If it takes at least, let's say, if it takes more than 2 or 5 minutes to make an amend, something like this, once again they won't use you again. If you can do it in half a minute, then fine. Then you are good. You can again continue to work with them. So it's very, very important to work non-destructively and have everything on separate layers. But again, it doesn't mean to have everything on separate layer. It doesn't mean that you can be clumsy and have them all hanging around. As you can see, this is very organized. I have the original file names used as the groups, and in the groups I have all the separate layers again named everything. And I also have the mask. I kept the mask, so if I want to see the original additional parts on this image, I can still see it. It's still there. I didn't delete it. So if they want to make amends between the merging of these 2 parts or 2 images, I can still do that because I just masked instead of deleting. And then the middle image, just the upper body, and then the lower body plus the 2 girls on the right, and then cleaning the floor, and then cleaning or merging the colors and making these adjustments to create the final result. So this is just an example of fashion retouch, but there's so many other retouch examples. And let me show you beauty retouch, which is also a big industry in itself. So this is again something that you would do for a magazine, to go through all the little details like eyes, lips, hair, skin, and everything. And of course, in like professional high-end retouch, you can't just simply use a blur on the face and just make it look like it's plastic. You have to make all the little pores visible, but it has to be all perfect. So it's again time consuming but really nice thing to do. It's actually, I can tell you that whenever I do retouching, it's very relaxing. If you know the techniques that you need to use and you're confident with what you're doing, then it's very relaxing. I usually have music on, and this is something where you don't really need to think. Once you have the techniques, you just simply apply them again and again, and it doesn't get boring because you always have great images to work with, and it's really relaxing. I really enjoy doing it. So I always have music on. Sometimes I even watch like a film on the side because basically you retouch little details and you don't really have to concentrate on it once you know what you are doing. So it's really fun. Retouching is actually great fun. And then I haven't talked about the creative side of retouching, because what I talked about is technical retouching, and I don't think I have a slide for that, but the examples I showed are technical retouch, but for example this one is creative retouch, because of course this is not realistic. This is an effect that you add to the image, and this is when it's more creative and it's more used for advertisement. In this case, if you remember the Black Swan posters, that's where they use this effect. And these effects are again part of retouch or photo manipulation, but this is more the creative part of it, or creative side of it. Main skills that you need for being able to work in the retouch industry is of course manipulation, rendering techniques, which applies mainly light, like dodge and burn, and all the brushes to use for that, understanding the trends in the fashion industry, and working with colors. It's actually not that much skills that you need. It's mainly understanding what the client wants and what they want to achieve, and the techniques needed for that. Additional skills, once again, illustration is useful. Makeup, I can tell, is very useful. When I started doing retouch, of course I don't do makeup, so I didn't know anything about makeup. And when I started doing the portrait retouch, I realized that I can actually learn a lot from makeup. So I started watching makeup tutorials on YouTube, and I learned a lot from those. Actually, I probably learned more from that than from tutorials on retouch topic. So like tutorials about Photoshop. From makeup tutorials, like actually girls applying makeup on them, helped me a lot, because I started to use the same techniques with Photoshop tools. And that's what you need to do. You have to use all these makeup techniques to make a portrait look nice. Anatomy is again very useful. I'm sure you've seen these Photoshop disasters when there's like, I don't know, very strange, I don't know, 6 fingers or stuff like that. They sometimes do too long like waist, or the legs are not in proportion with the body. And have you seen that example from the magazine? Again, when you have to combine the upper body with the lower body, you have to have a sense of what's in proportion, because you have to transform the two together, and it's up to you what size you use for the upper body, for example. So you have to understand anatomy as well a bit. Of course, you don't have to be a doctor, but you have to understand it. Photography and print production, again, useful when you apply these changes. And mainly used areas are these. So in Photoshop, you will use these tools most of the time. Apart from the retouch tools like healing brush, spot healing brush, the clone stamp tool, you will use a lot of masking brushes, and these modifiers, the liquify tool and puppet warp tool, are again very useful. Let me just show you an example of that. I guess I have that somewhere here, the puppet warp one. Maybe don't. Let me just find that example. It's really useful to see how that works. Fashion, puppet warp. So you have in Photoshop a very interesting tool called puppet warp. I already made a selection and moved this girl onto a separate layer. That was the original background, by the way, but I took a photo of the background without her in the picture, and then I took one with her in the picture, and then I just simply made a selection of her and then made it look like, okay, I can separate her from her background. And then I turned her layer into a smart object, which is very simple. Right click, convert to smart object, and then I went to edit, puppet warp, and puppet warp will create a very intricate mesh on her, and it's much more clever than free transform, which this mesh I can hide. And then I can put down a pinpoint on her neck, for example, on the waist, and probably here on the legs. And then if I start to move this one on the top, I can change her pose. So I can tell her, it's like a puppet, I can tell her to please look up a bit or turn to the right and so on and so forth. And this is actually something that they already use in the industry. So they have a great shot of a model, and let's say the hands are like this. If they want to move the hands around, they just need to put the pins down, and then they will be able to use the hands just like a puppet. And as you can see, it doesn't even distort the image. Of course, once again, I have to understand anatomy, so I can't do something like this. So it has to be still realistic. But if you put the pins down, again, something like this won't be natural. But if you understand how a body can work, then you can easily do this. For example, if I want to change the leg, I can again put pins down there and I can play around with the leg. And so on and so forth. I can do the same with the arms. So I can say, okay, just move that down a bit, move this back up a bit, and so on and so forth. So it's really interesting to use these tools, and the reason why I use the smart object in the first place, if you're wondering why did I use that, because I want to work non-destructively. Again, very important. Imagine you do a very bad change with the puppet works, you create like a monster, and you want to go back to change it. Then, if you didn't use a smart object in the first place, you will have to go back in history or start from scratch because it's applied and it's done. But because I have a smart object, the puppet warp will work non-destructively. I can turn it on and off here in the layers panel, and if I double click on it, I can even access my pinpoints, and I can move them around and I can make amends to it. Okay, so it's completely non-destructive because I use the smart object. And these little things like using smart objects in Photoshop is essential in all fields, mainly in graphic design and photo retouch, but also in digital art it's useful to use smart objects. So the good news is, if you learn the tools in Photoshop for one field, you can almost exactly apply the same things in the other fields. In like the things you learn in graphic design, you will be able to apply it in photo retouch and vice versa. So these areas actually help each other out. Okay, and I think that's all. If you have any questions, you can ask now. Just one more thing. About the other two seminars I'm going to do. Just as I said in the beginning, I will continue from this point, and I'm going to go in depth about how to apply for jobs, how to look for jobs, and how to build your portfolio, which is a very important thing as a designer or any of these fields. So that's my second seminar. Please, if you enjoy this one, just join me on that one as well. And the third one is about saving time, where I'm going to actually show you. That's not talking about theory and stuff. That's just pure Photoshop techniques. My third seminar, where I show you all the best time savers, which I use every day. So, do you have any questions about this seminar? Yes?
You seem to have done a lot of work across different areas of the industry. Is that something that you wanted to do at the beginning, or have you just found yourself photo retouching and then digital arting, or some of it hobbies?
It's actually it's an interesting question. As I said in the beginning, it might be better for you to focus on one thing and then just do that, because then you can be really good in that area. I consider myself probably good in graphic design, but in digital art, I never really had the time to properly do it, and that's why I don't get like big clients. I can work for little illustrations and a bit of concept arting for smaller projects, but I won't be able to work for like big clients. But what I enjoy is the variety of work. And because I'm an instructor and I'm a presenter as well, it's great to have all these different examples. So I enjoy sharing what I learned from different industries. I actually feel like it's like a discovery or exploring the world of the creative industry, which I enjoy. So mainly that's why I like to get into as much as I can. Of course, that's the disadvantage of it, as probably I won't be able to get to the top in any of these. Even in photo retouch, no matter how fast and good I am, I know that there are so many better artists because they just do that. And they don't do presentations and stuff like that. They just sit at home and do it all the time. And of course they will be better. So it's up to you. It's actually good to have a bit of variety. So not just do like fashion retouch, and then you can get a bit bored if you just do the same thing all the time. And as I said, because the tools that you use for one field, you can apply to others. It's good to try yourself in lots of them and find which one you like the best. And maybe you find a balance. As a freelance designer, it's completely up to you. So you can do like web design in the morning, a bit of digital art in the afternoon. So it's great if you have a bit of variety. Any other? Yes?
Earlier in the presentation, you said something that it took you about 3 years to learn. Was that Photoshop or retouching?
It's all I know at. So yeah, it was about retouching. So 3 years ago, when I first had my first client to do retouch specifically. And that was 3 years ago, and it took me 3 years to learn everything what I know at the moment about retouch. But as I said, I'm still learning, so it never stops. Whatever you do in the creative industry, there's always something new. New trends coming out, you have to understand new features come out in these applications, which again, like puppet work came out in the previous version. In the CS6 version, there's again a lot of good things that you can apply in retouching, which came out. So you have to always learn. But it took me 3 years to be able to work for clients like what you've seen in like that magazine, like professional retouch. But again, it's up to you. It can be half a year if you concentrate on that area. Because I was doing lots of different things, it took me 3 years. I just said that because that's my experience.
I was going to ask how, was that sort of 50% of your time or sort of 10% of your time that you were doing?
It was probably 20% because I was teaching full time. So I usually work in the evenings. I teach 8-9 hours, and then I work in the evenings and in weekends.
Sorry, one more question. What was the resource that you used for learning? Was it mainly
for learning?
Yourself, or did you do tutorials? Or?
I'm mainly self-taught. I've studied industrial. I'm an engineer. I studied in the product design at the university, but on the side I studied in other graphic design schools. I'm from Hungary, so I just came to London 2 years ago, so I studied almost everything in Hungary, but mainly I can tell that most of these things I'm self-taught. So Photoshop I've learned on my own and from tutorials mainly and books. But if you want to know more about this, in the next seminar I will talk more in depth, like how to learn, how to prepare. I even will talk about the exams that you can take to become certified as an Adobe Photoshop user, which actually helps in the industry. More and more I can see that they differentiate if someone has that exam or not. So there's the Adobe Certified Expert, which you can get as a certificate. But mainly self-taught. And yeah, I have so many friends that I inspire to work to be in the creative industry, and I told them what to learn, what to follow, and what to do, and now they are in the industry and they all work as professionals. So it's definitely something that you can do on your own at home. But just 1 second. Social media is something which will also help you a lot. Very important to share your work and ask for opinion. If you do it from home and you learn on your own, most important thing is share what you do as much as you can. Show it to everyone and then ask for opinion, and also look for inspiration online. Okay, I don't want to get more time, but there was one more question. Are you sure? Okay, thanks. Yeah? Maybe ask in the break. Thank you so much.